It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. The Sports Hit List presents Smoking Mirrors with Declan Krogman and the Polius Brothers, Greg and Stefan, breaking down the biggest news in sports, giving you the stories behind the story. Here for all the smoke, all the time, right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Friday edition of Smoking Mirrors presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my fellow hosts, Declan Krogman and Greg Polius. How you guys doing today? Deck, how you doing? How was your week, man?
It's been a busy week. Not bad. I got my braces off, finally. Obviously, we got a big show to talk about. Let's get into it.
Nice. Greg, how about you? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Week's been a little difficult, not going to lie. I got a lot on my mind. Before I get to everything that's on my mind, I just want to say prayers out to those out in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the volcano La Soufrière, the area in which the volcano was. You know, it's ash and volcanic, rocks and stuff like that. It's not a good scene. So I have a couple friends that are doing some charity work and for Vinci Strong and putting together items to ship to St. Vincent for people in need. I believe 16 to 20,000 people have been displaced. And then also, prayers out to the neighboring islands like St. Lucia, Barbados, and Martinique that are also affected from the volcanic ash raining down on their islands.
Great on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And before we get into any sports thing, it's always going to be sports is never going to go anywhere in this country. But sometimes we have to tackle, real life issues that affect us every day. And for me, I want to just touch on Daunte Wright. May he rest in peace. And there's a particular part of this story that really sits the wrong way with me. And it's the notion that no matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on, I see far too many people say, well, he shouldn't have resisted. He shouldn't have moved away. When the truth of the matter is, every single person who said that, it's very easy to say that from the confines of your own home until you've been in that situation. It's to say he shouldn't have resisted is to not put yourself in that predicament in that very moment at that time in his life. And I'm speaking from experience. I have been falsely arrested for a warrant I didn't know I had. And whenever the cop tells you, please, not please, because the cops that I've had told me, step out of the vehicle. We'll discuss it after we get out. But my thing is, why do we have to discuss it when I get out? Why can't you let me know what's going on so I can discuss with you if there's some type of clerical error or not? Because that was what happened in the case of Daunte Wright. He never even was issued, the necessary paperwork. I'm not even going to touch on the misinformation campaign behind that. But so now I get cuffed in broad daylight, and he's telling me that, well, your license has been suspended multiple times. I'm like, wait a minute. You're cuffing me in broad daylight like I'm an actual criminal, and my license was never even suspended. Well, we'll go down to the station and figure it out. Now, I was 32 or 33 when that happened. So I was much more measured in my approach to this particular officer, even though he was dead wrong, than I would have been at 20 years old. And after he cuffed me, if I was 20 years old and he grabbed me by the arm, I have no idea how I would have reacted, especially given today. If it was today's social climate 10 to 12 years ago, I probably would have tried to get back in my car too, because at that point, I am frightened for my life. I am scared for my life. Not one person, not one detractor ever said that kid might have feared for his life. It was he shouldn't have resisted arrest. What if he didn't know why he was being arrested? Did anybody ever stop to ask themselves that? And it's really frustrating seeing that, because they don't think of these kids or these people as human beings. They think of them as statistics. And that could have been me. That could have been you, Steph. That could have been our other brother Garrison, And it's frustrating when people try to defend certain actions that are indefensible. So, prayers out to his family. They can never get him back. That's something they're going to have to deal with. And I just hope that we as a country moving forward can understand that people are people, not statistics.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, nose on the head. And I remember when that happened to you and the feelings you were going through. And again, like you said, he's 20, and to expect people at 20 years old, if every person that is critical, that is critical, I should say, of Daunte Wright, could place themselves in their 20-year-old self and expect to always do the right thing or to know what to do, it's really foolish. And you ask a lot of people in those moments, one of the scariest moments in your life, when you know at that point that you've been pulled over by a police officer, you are a black man, what happens every time. Just about every time that this happens is if whether you leave with your life or you don't, or your dignity, like there's going to be an unpleasant altercation, and the expectation that you're going to be poised in one of your worst moments is just foolish.
And just to note, like, I legitimately have PTSD when there's sirens I'm driving and sirens pull up behind me. I start to shake because I don't know what's going to happen at this point. And my license could be totally clean, but it never fails.
It always lingers.
Yes. It always there. And I was lucky. I had the privilege to have people in my corner who were high-ranking court officers or who were former first grade NYPD detectives to make calls to get me out within 12 hours out of central bookings. But had I not had that, I would have been jailed for overnight for essentially a wrongful arrest. Because when I went to the DMV the very next day, only to find out my license was never actually suspended. And the system the NYPD uses doesn't operate on the same wavelength as the state. So it wasn't in sync.
Yeah, I mean, that's horrible, man. Just kind of thinking about that whole thing. It's from Daunte Wright and from your story. It's obviously an emotional way to talk about the show, to start the show, excuse me, but it's a conversation that we have to talk about. Obviously, my father has never had the conversation with me. He hasn't had to, what to do when you get pulled over by the cops, because we live in two different Americas in that situation, and that's why it's so tough. And I do notice, and you bring up a great point, people saying like, oh, don't resist, don't do this, don't do that, when they could never be in that position. Like, literally, mentally, emotionally, you can think that you're trying to put yourself in that position, but you really can't, because it's physically impossible. At least for me, as a white man or a white kid or whatever, to find myself in that position, because I'm not black. I'm not necessarily being targeted by the cops, or altercations with the police don't go over as smoothly as it would me being white. So that's my piece. I don't know how much I have to say about it that is going to even compare to what you guys have brought to the table today. But I would just say that, prayers out to Daunte Wright. It's a horrible situation. We've seen athletes across the country taking breaks from playing, and rightfully so. It's emotionally draining, and there's really no way to wrap your head around it. And the one thing I'll say, and I'll end on this, is if you're focusing on Daunte Wright or what warrant he may have had or wrongfully had or whatever you think the story is, and Greg said he didn't want to get into the misinformation campaign, I won't either. Just remember that a cop tried to put a taser at him and accidentally fired a gun. That doesn't happen. It's inexcusable. You know it. I know it. A random person on the street could pick up a taser and a gun and know the difference, let alone a cop who supposedly has good training, which might be a myth. But that's what I got to say on that.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Deck. And you're right as far as the training part of it. She's a 26-year veteran. So it wasn't like she was just fresh out of the academy. Yeah, she's been in many situations, and that just it's disgusting, and it's not an excuse that you can have. But Greg, I just want to say, thank you for sharing. That's not easy. It's not easy to hear. It's not easy to share. So yeah, thank you. But for all those at home, we are a sports show, so we will get to our sports. So thank you for taking the time to listen to us and partake in this conversation with us. But we do have some breaking news via the Athletic, where there's another scandal in the Mets organization. All right, so in this scenario, it is there two staffers, I believe, two that I read about. It was David Newman and Joe DeVito. They were accused of sexual misconduct. It's the allegations out there of sexual misconduct by the both of them, by former staffers. And the way that this is kind of playing out is similar to what we've heard about Mickey Callaway and Jared Porter. In this case, it's solely with the organization, whereas Jared Porter and Mickey Callaway were, situations that took place outside of the Mets. But these staffers apparently went to their head of HR. I think her name was Holly Linval. Linval. I think
so, yeah.
Yeah. But they went to HR like anyone would do with an issue at any company because they feel threatened, they feel unsafe, and those complaints never went anywhere. There was never anything leveled against the perpetrators, which, there's a whole other piece there about HR in the workplace, but the reports have come out now. We have, at least in one case, David Newman was rehired by the Mets this offseason, I believe. And in the case of Joe DeVito stepped away in March, saying he wanted to reevaluate his career. I'm paraphrasing there, but I'll break it. I'll let you guys speak on it. What do you think, Deck? How do you feel? Where do you think this falls for the Mets moving forward, and just for the MLB?
It's damaging 100%, as it should be. It's a horrible situation. Yet again, we're just being sadly and unfortunately reminded that in today's Major League Baseball, or today's corporate world in general, women are falling victim to abuse time and time again. And I'd like to also mention, because Ken Rosenthal, somebody named Strong, I forgot her first name, broke this. And also Britt Giraldi broke this story, which is very interesting to me because she was one of the, I forget how many it was, one of the multiple women who Mickey Callaway had inappropriate relations or inappropriate messages or one-way relations with, should I say. So that's got to be pretty, not necessarily refreshing, but very important for her to get her voice out, and especially to break this story to just kind of continue to take down this whole misconduct in Major League Baseball and in sports in general. I think that's excellent for her. So props to her. Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, published a story. Chuck Baldy was all over that a couple of days ago, saying it was going to come out. Came out this morning before the show. It's a horrible situation. Greg?
Well, shout out to Steve Cohen for hiring an outside independent law firm to get to the bottom of this, because clearly, as I mentioned when I was on the Gray Area podcast with Ray Jarvis, shout out to him, that the Wilpons never actually cared about baseball. They cared about real estate and whatever other business ventures they had. Baseball was not their sole focus. And they allowed this culture to grow uncontrollable and didn't care to address it, which is why we have what we have today in the report from The Athletic. And their inability to cover or to reprimand men that were in positions of power when they did wrong is so problematic. And I'm happy that Steve Cohen is actually taking a stance and trying to get to the bottom of it.
It's the thing he has to do, though. I think as new ownership, at the very least, Steve Cohen has to have an outside, investigation, essentially. And I think he made the right move. I'm not going to sit there and say that, he would be complicit moving forward, because we don't know that. But at the very least, he started on the right foot. I will say, though, because now you're dealing with a component and your team president and Sandy Alderson, who's a part of some of these decisions, and it was aware or should have been aware of what was taking place in this organization. I think for the case of David Newman, there were complaints about his, inappropriate comments towards women's appearances. And in one case, he gave a woman an unsolicited back rub, and that's from 2005 to 2018. So this man had a history with the organization that doesn't just go back a few years, and then you have Sandy who, came out in a statement and said, not every instance involving men and women in the workplace is a capital offense. Okay. Every time something happens, it doesn't mean somebody had to be fired. Now, that to me is not necessarily the message you want to put out there, but he did go on to say that there are intermediate steps that they can and have taken in different cases, but not every case that rises to the level of execution. So you do, you have Jared Porter, Mickey Callaway didn't have to be fired by the Mets, but there was
that bad of a manager.
He shouldn't have been hired in the first place.
Yeah, he shouldn't have. He should not have been. But as far as when he's talking about these intermediate steps, I personally have not seen them. So to say that they're taking steps to reprimand, that doesn't have to be firing, it doesn't seem like that. He's belittling to me the complaints of the people, the staffers, these lower level people in the organization that are feeling mistreated by those in power. And to say that, well, every offense doesn't really need to be that big. It's not a capital offense. He's missing the mark. And I think that this is ubiquitous in sports, though. You'll see this everywhere.
There's that word again.
Hey, baby, it's gonna come out every now and then, and it needed to stretch its legs. It's been a few days. It was
bringing out the encyclopedia.
But yes, it is something that is ubiquitous, pervasive in sports. You're going to see it happening time and time again. We have seen it happen. So when we take these situations and we try to make it isolated issues, it very much isn't, because we can connect the dots. Now, I'll say, just to finish up, both David Newman and Joe DeVito denied these allegations, with, I believe, David Newman saying he's unaware of this issue. And then Joe DeVito straight up saying that it didn't happen, and that any time that he's been in the workplace or been around colleagues, he's acted appropriately. I have a hard time believing that. Just given the context and the context
and the kind of history around the organization under the Wilpons.
Yes,
I think that's the big thing there, that this happened under their ownership, and we haven't heard about it prior to. It's like the stain of Jeff and Fred that just won't go away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, I don't want to focus on just their ownership, because like that, Steve Cohen could potentially fall into that same pitfall. It's not like it's.
But he could also right the ship, though.
I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying he's already, in his short tenure, has done more to address the situation than the previous owners. Which
is very good.
I would say yes. I just don't want to give out flowers and commend people for what should be just a base level understanding of how you approach this. If there's a complaint like this, if you see something that again that is as pervasive as this has been, you should be doing this, getting an outside investigation, and a part of that, because I read into that as well, that they're looking into workplace misconduct, focusing on sexual harassment and discrimination issues. So it's a specific, specific areas they're looking at and analyzing to see what has transpired in this organization, and maybe, start to cut out those cancers. But, and this is the problem that we see in all sports, when someone has relevance to an organization, whether it's a player or maybe it's a front office with their connections or however they provide for the team, that importance can supersede, those actions, which is why these executives get to skate by more often than not, because they provide a service. They provide more to the organization there than if they were to leave. So I'm hoping this investigation is fruitful. It comes, because there's going to be more. There should be more, because this is only what the Athletic is reporting on. I'm sure there are other cases within this organization that this is taking place. We just have to see what yields from this investigation. That to me is important.
Yeah, this has just gotten started. There's going to be
absolutely,
definitely. And there's going to be repercussions, and more punishments or potentially more people being ousted of their jobs, and rightfully so. If this is true, I think that is the punishment that should be handed down 100%, especially if a guy's going to come out and deny it. But we'll see. Just like we kept the same energy with, the whole Deshaun Watson situation, I guess we're going to have to at least look at this from, I don't want to say both sides at all, but we're going to have to look at this and examine everything that goes on over the course of the next couple of weeks. But it looks terrible for the Mets, and it's a culture that let's be honest, guys, it would not surprise if any of this is true. It almost feels like it feels like it's too true.
Yeah, it definitely gets that vibe.
Given the organization.
And shout out to Eddie Williams, avid fan of the Sports Hit List, in the comments said the Mets organization is a train wreck. I don't know if I agree with that in its entirety. I think for this specific portion, the Mets have not handled it well based on who's been in the front office. But as far as the Mets organization being a train wreck, nah.
I will say, as long as there are men in the front office of which is predominantly every organization in sports, you will have these situations. Not one organization has a closet that doesn't have skeletons in it. So to look at this situation and say it's specific to the Mets is to try to believe that other organizations are squeaky clean. And especially when we talk about, going back to something else we spoke about on the prior show, cheating in baseball, it's the same thing where you can't find an organization that isn't trying to do that because it gave them an advantage. In this case, no one was calling out these executives, and the people that were complaining to HR in these cases nothing was happening. So why would you continue to be a problem, put a target on your back if you know that the people that are supposed to help you are not helping you? If anything, they're only letting your perpetrators know that you complained, and that's problematic. And I just want to end on that HR piece, because that is important, not just in sports, that's for any company, and you have, I think it was, they didn't put any names on it, but there was a quote here saying, it was clear that the interest was protecting ownership and executives and not the office as a whole. That to me is what you never want to see, but unfortunately is very common, where when you think that HR is there for you, to protect you, to help you when you feel defenseless, they're truly not, because what was that HR person doing? She was protecting herself and the company, so yeah. It's something to think about. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Please stick around. We're going to be talking a little bit more about baseball, give you some fun facts, hopefully, that you enjoy. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We'll be right back.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This is Smoke and Mirrors on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my fellow hosts, Declan Krogman and Greg Polius. So we're talking a little baseball before the break, but now that you're with us, now we're going to get into a little college baseball, I would say. And I want to lead it with
sports.
College sports. You're right. It's college sports. Because we have March Madness behind us, and the NFL draft is ahead of us. You have two collegiate sports that have dominated headlines. But what about college baseball? Yeah, that's something that gets lost in the shuffle very often. We're all baseball guys on this show, so we understand the hierarchy, as far as it goes with the networks. I would say all of us except for Greg. He's our resident host that is just against the grain, no matter what. But Greg believes
80% of the time.
I would say 90. Don't do yourself any favors. It's about 90.
I was kind of going to go like 95.
But Greg believes that while college basketball and football are, the breadwinners for collegiate sports, it is actually baseball that's the most exciting of them all. So Greg, I'm going to let you take it away and explain to the folks at home why you believe college baseball truly is the most exciting collegiate sport.
Okay, let me start by asking a question. With the past NCAA tournament, what were the biggest stories that drove the headlines?
Is that rhetorical? Should I ask it? Should I answer it?
You want the answer?
I want the answer. I want the answer.
Can I give a few? All right. Well, I would say the Jalen Suggs
Well, from a team perspective, not an individual player perspective, from a team perspective.
I believe the answer you're looking for is Gonzaga going for the perfect season.
No. There was something bigger than that. There was something bigger than that. That it was like a fever pitch when it happened. Or it happened a few times.
Greg's
I mean, I guess every upset.
There we go. Upsets.
Sister G.
No, come on, guy. Every year, the biggest draw in the tournament is who's going to upset who because it's a one-game tournament, right? Mm-hmm. And you have, but the difference with football, college football, and college basketball, the parity levels is not there in football. Like, it's very rare you're going to get an Appalachian State to beat a LSU. Like, that almost never happens. It may happen once every 50 years. In college basketball, only recently have upsets become more prevalent, where you have like a 13 beating a 5 or
16 beating a 1.
Yeah, but I think that happened once or twice.
Yeah,
but
Virginia and
in college baseball, this particular sport at the collegiate level has the most parity out of, even in college soccer and college lacrosse. The better teams almost always win. That doesn't happen in college baseball. When I was at Hofstra, Old Dominion was ranked, I think, 23rd or 24th, and we beat them in a season series. Obviously, it didn't make headlines because who the hell cares about Hofstra versus ODU on some random weekend in March? No one. But if we as Americans and as fans, as consumers of the sport, enjoy upsets so much, if the TV networks did right by college baseball, it would be a lot bigger. Like, for instance, I always talk about blue blood collegiate schools like a Duke or UNC in basketball. In baseball,
Tom Selleck.
In baseball, you have your Cal State Fullertons, Vanderbilts, University of Florida. Like, those are like kind of the upper echelon schools. In 2019 College Baseball World Series and the Super Regionals, Dallas Baptist University swept University of Florida. Can you imagine?
Noah Syndergaard's alma mater.
Yeah, can you imagine Dallas Baptist beating Florida in football or in basketball? No, it would never happen. It wouldn't even be televised. But this happens. That's what I'm saying. But this happens all the time in collegiate baseball. Even St. John's, our hometown school, made it to the Super Regionals one year. Nobody expected them. They had a great program. I think it was like 2017 or 2018. And on top of that, the difference between college baseball and MLB baseball is the fans are much closer. So everybody loves a good heckle, right? Steph, you play college baseball. When you go to a big-time program that you're playing against, those fans are right on top of you. Some of the heckling is actually hilarious. It would make for great TV content. Plus, you could hear what's going on in the dugout. Declan, when you were watching Yankees Blue Jays, what was some of the most fun aspects of that particular game in the Blue Jays' new stadium?
I guess were they getting heckled? I didn't even hear.
No, but you hear the players in the dugout.
Oh yeah, you know what I love? I love when a guy like Jeff McNeil strikes out and he yells like "MFer," like that time when Greg struck out that guy and he broke his bat and it went on SportsCenter. That's what I like. I like that a lot.
Shout out to Greg.
But that's actually why I watch.
But what I'm saying is, like, the collegiate baseball atmosphere is a lot more entertaining when you watch it for the casual fan as opposed to a major league game, especially if you're watching the Yankees booth.
I just want to say,
we got to take shots at Michael K. Like, that's so unnecessary.
I mean, it's an easy target though. That's low hanging fruit, Michael K.
Oh, absolutely.
No, not Michael K. If you want to go,
no, the booth as a whole. The booth as a whole.
Right, no, true. But I mean, he's a part of that booth, so I mean, he's low hanging fruit. They're all low hanging fruit.
I don't know if I said this last episode or if I said this during the chat, but you Mets fans, you always got to find something that has nothing to do with on-field play that's better than everyone else.
Steph said, it was low-hanging fruit, so I just took it. It was there. It was easy.
Whatever. You know what?
But
take all your shots on Michael K. He's got the best show on television, in my opinion. But whatever. Let's go back to this college baseball stuff.
So yes, Carl said in the comments, where do we even watch college baseball? And this is part of the problem. Because I watch a ton of college baseball on ESPNU, ESPN3. It's only really mainstream until we get to the Super Regionals, because those are the best teams in the country. but it's ripe for upsets because we love upsets. But ESPN doesn't push the product because the TV contracts aren't there. If the TV contracts were there, I think a lot of people will be able to see the product on display. And not only that, what's one of the great things about college football and college basketball? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today. So when we watched a Zion at Duke, or we watched Anthony Edwards at Georgia, and you were like, these guys are going to be good. We're watching right now at Vanderbilt. Well, I know I'm watching. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah,
Jack Leiter is a legit MLB pitcher playing at the collegiate level right now. And if ESPN would actually promote Vanderbilt's games, people would tune in. Vanderbilt has 2 starters, Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, that project to be number 1 and number 2 starters in the MLB in the next 3 to 4 years. Like, if Jack Leiter made it to the MLB at the end of this season when rosters expanded, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, he's projected to be a top 5 pick in my opinion.
Yeah, he's so great. And you know what his reward's going to be? He's going to play for the Pirates.
That's going to suck.
That's horrible, first of all.
No, he's not. He's not going to turn the organization around. But Jack Leiter, I don't know if it was mentioned, but Al Leiter's son, right?
Al Leiter's son, cousin of.
Shout out this for those that didn't know.
Yeah. Mark Leiter.
It's Paul Lawson. Shout out to Paul Lawson in the comments. He said nobody watched Anthony Edwards at Georgia. I was just giving an example of a top pick performing in college.
Zion, even people watched Lonzo. I mean,
yeah. Well,
that's more the brand that is his father.
Yes.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say though about college baseball, and I disagree with you, but I also get where you're coming from. The one thing is that with college baseball is that people are looking to watch the stars of tomorrow. Sometimes even these really good players are the stars of 3 years from now, like you said. Like the instant gratification thing that Jeter was talking about with everything.
Mm-hmm.
It works with fans too, knowing that okay, this guy might be great, but I'm not going to see him until 2025. Things are definitely different when it comes to baseball as opposed to the sports where you get drafted and you're in the pros immediately.
That's a very good point.
It is a very good point. I think part of that problem also is MLB marketing.
Totally.
Like, after a player gets drafted, we lose track of him unless we're a fan of that team. Like when Michael Conforto got drafted out of OK State, I knew where he was when he was because I'm a Met fan. But when Steven Strasburg got drafted out of San Diego State, I was like,
first overall,
this guy's going to be great, but I don't care about him until he gets to the big leagues. So I definitely see where you're coming from. And if MLB can market, say, like their minor league games, because it'll be real nice to see guys go, like say Jack Leiter gets drafted by the Pirates, right? ESPN, shows on a Saturday afternoon slot, hey, let's look at Jack Leiter in his first ever minor league start. They do this for high school basketball. Before guys even make a high school All-American game. Bronny James. Obviously, his father's is LeBron James, but Bronny James has played nationally televised games as a freshman in high school. So the marketing aspect is there if they want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I love that meme about Bronny James where it's like he says he doesn't want to wear 23, so he doesn't want to know who that is, and they're like the public address announcers like Bronny James, number 4. Hey, yo, who's that guy? Idea. But going back to the college baseball thing, I'm trying to get at because we talked about a lot.
There's some really good questions in the comments, by the way.
Absolutely, there's a ton. Got it. So what's kind of funny, and you mentioned Steven Strasburg going first overall. That reminds me of when the next year by the same team, the Nationals, Bryce Harper went first overall, and how weird the MLB marketing is, and how they kind of just do nothing to college baseball. You see a lot of these guys get drafted out of high school, and Bryce Harper was a high school dropout. Didn't graduate high school. Obviously it worked out fine, but he didn't graduate high school. He went to a junior college for, I forget, was it a year or two, whatever it was.
What was it? Why his name stuck out after he did that is because he went to a wood bat JUCO league.
Yes.
So that made headlines.
The MLB marketed him more than any player that's really played. I think the MLB has marketed that prospect in Bryce Harper more than they've marketed anybody for the past.
Absolutely. Push as well, though.
That
was a big social media push as well, though. I think it wasn't just the MLB. Everyone was obsessed with Bryce Harper and this story,
And people are starting to get that vibe with Leiter, though, a little bit. Not at that extent, but they're still starting to get that. Okay, this kid's throwing flames, no hitters at Vanderbilt. Let's maybe market him up a little more. The MLB social media team isn't half bad either.
Bryce Harper also did a great job of marketing himself.
Yes.
His YouTube clips of his BP were
Mammoth home runs.
phenomenal, you know.
Yeah.
But to Paul Lawson's questions, he's asking about the last 3 minor league players. Yeah, I kind of touched on it, Paul, but a part of the issue is even after college, because we knew like a guy like what's this Phillies ace, Aaron Nola from LSU. We knew he was going to be a star.
young pick.
You know, Alex Bregman also out of LSU. We knew these guys were going to be good, but when they got to the minor leagues, we didn't hear about them, and that's because the MLB doesn't push their minor league product, which is why it was so easy for them to cut it out like that with no real pushback, because they do their own product a disservice.
The thing that would be great to see. Go ahead, Steph.
I was going to say, I think that the part of not pushing the minors is that you underpay a lot of these guys, right? Even the studs that go in there. And I think to put a focus on emphasis and then make them a product, you would have to pay them, right? It isn't like it's NCAA and you could just market them and they get no money. Like you would have to then invest more into these minor league players that, you know, you end up taking in, because, you know, the baseball draft is so long. There's so many players that you ultimately end up having this huge pool that you're hoping that, you know, like the guys that we draft in the top are going to be worthwhile and they're going to contribute to the organization. But if you're not paying them that much, you're not really taking a huge loss. And that investment into the players, I think, is one part of it. But I also will say, Greg, just to go back to what you were saying at the top about, you know, the upsets. I think those upsets are important and people do like it, but it's also gameplay. And we still have the issue of gameplay being a problem for casual fans to enjoy when it comes to baseball. So until you start to like change that a little bit, it would still be hard for me to see people buying into and the collegiate baseball as a viable option for them to watch and enjoy, because it still takes it's still a long game to watch, and it can be very slow for people to stay engaged.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that per se. I do think that the metal bats, they make a difference in gameplay.
Yes, they do.
Make a very big difference in gameplay. As much as I would love college to go to wood bats to make players.
Yes, I think that's important for player development and allowing guys to go through the system quicker instead of staying in AA super long or just high A because they aren't used to it.
Absolutely, but there's too much money to be made from playing in
metal bat sponsorships and everything is too.
Yeah, $300-400 a bat. You got a team of 25 hitters. You know, it's a lot of money right there. Every one player gets a bat each.
Yeah. So what's great to see was Michael Conforto, though. Like you mentioned, he came from, was it Oregon State? I think he came from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He came from Oregon State. I think he got drafted 10th overall by the Mets back in 2014, and all of a sudden he goes in 2015, a year and it was like a year and a month later, 13 months later. He's in the big leagues, skips through AAA. So a story like that is cool, especially if you see high prospects not linger around the minors for 2 to 3 years, especially if they played in college.
Now, the problem is that's the exception to the rule. But in terms of the gameplay, though, like I said, the metal bats make a difference. And I also do think the aura around the game itself, like 2-2 counts, you look over at the dugout, you guys got their rituals that they don't do in the big leagues. I don't know if you did that when you were in college. 2-2 count, 2 outs. You rub it on your hat. There's like a certain saying you say. Like it's fun. It's infectious. There's smack talking from the dugout that you hear more regularly. The chant, it just makes for a more watchable experience to the casual fan.
Kids are more emotional and insecure. Yes. So you'll get not insecure, immature, and they get the little hot mic moments are incredible in college.
I love them.
You saw that guy from Louisville. He walks off the mound. He's yelling "F you" at the hitters, and then he gives up a bomb the next inning, and they lose the championship. Like that is fun. It's good to see. I mean, baseball is humbling, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Greg, I think you made some really good points, though. While I disagree about the gameplay being something that can that will lock people in, I do agree that the marketing of minor league players is important, and it should be a part of the overall process when you're going from, college player to minor league player to major league player. It's the only sport where you have to go through a minor league system, 3 levels.
And hockey does that too.
Hockey is less of a farm though, but also a lot of branch out teams.
Apologies, did not know that. Baseball and hockey, but I think more prevalent in baseball and being
Yes.
a difficult space to try and make a name for yourself, because you could be an amazing collegiate athlete and then get lost in the minor league system very easily. So keeping track of and kind of monitoring what the minor leaguers are doing would be so big for baseball. So I think you hit the nail on the head. And maybe there's something there. If anyone from the MLB Network is listening, you should take notes and give us credit. Give Smoke and Mirrors credit. But as you see, we're heading to commercial. Please, stay locked in. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a potential rule change for the MLB, something that I think, and Greg thinks, and I think Declan as well, might be the difference maker. So stay tuned. This is Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We'll be right back.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This is Smoke and Mirrors on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back. This is Smoke and Mirrors on the Sports Hit List. Presented by the Sports Hit List on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my fellow host, Declan Krogman, who I believe isn't here right now. You might have lost him for a bit, and Greg Polius. I guess we'll get Deck when he comes back in. But like I said before break, we were talking about a potential rule change. So the MLB is implementing a new rule in the Atlantic League, which is called the double hook rule.
Hold on, the Atlantic League is a professional independent league that doesn't have any Major League Baseball affiliates. So it's a league where the MLB tries to use rule implementations to try to get different gauges. Continue.
Appreciate that, Greg. For those at home that don't know that. Yeah. But it's called the double hook rule. And so essentially what it is once a team replaces a starting pitcher, they lose their designated hitter for the remainder of the game. All right. So that team will be required to either use a pinch hitter or allow the relief pitcher to hit. And, that's something that when we look at how the game is now, we have the DH rule in the National League. It's looking like they're going to move forward with that in 2022 season. The implications of a starting pitcher now having to, pitch deeper into a game for you to keep your DH will change strategies. So I find it very fascinating, very interesting. Greg, what do you think about this new rule? Is it something that you can see working in the MLB, or is it something that you feel like might be a little bit off point?
I actually love this rule. As you know, I'm a big proponent of complete games. Starters, going deep into games. I love that. That's kind of the mold I'm from and the type of player I am. So I like watching that. And what it does for the game of baseball at the major league level is it does a couple things. It forces managers to ride their starters when they're pitching well, as opposed to taking out a Jacob deGrom in the fifth inning because of quote unquote matchups or pitch counts.
That's only the Mets.
It's not only the Mets. It's rampant around baseball, but it wasn't as egregious as that. Yeah, that was very egregious, under 80 pitches and all that.
And beat right through like 95 in the snow.
Yeah, but what it also will do is it will place more onus contract-wise back on the starters as opposed to late inning relievers, where the money really should be, in my opinion, because there are sometimes where closers get an exorbitant amount of money, like Edwin Diaz, off of one good year, and then can't replicate the success.
He could be good this year.
I'm on
the Edwin Diaz train.
But here's the thing. You could be on the train all you want, but he has to prove that. Whereas a Jacob deGrom, a Garrett Cole, we know what these guys are. We know what they're going to give us every time they touch the mound. There's not one Met fan or one baseball fan that can tell you every time Edwin Diaz comes out, I know what I'm going to get.
What I want to say real quick is that about Edwin Diaz is, even if he's good, you didn't trade for him because he was good. It was because you thought he was going to be amazing and great.
Yeah, exactly.
He was so dominant in that season that, like, the Mets, Van Wagen thought that was That's what we needed. We needed Edwin Diaz in the in the ninth inning, and he was going to change the game for the Mets. But I think good isn't enough, and you didn't pick him up. You didn't trade for him because of that. I think he can be Deck, but I don't see him being what he was in Seattle, and a lot of that has to do with the exposure and the publicity being in a big city, a major market.
Yeah, I mean, you traded from because you hired an agent as a general manager, so that's why you traded. That's why you shipped away Jared.
You can get away with that one. I have no response.
Who's going to be retort. A stud? Yeah, and then they hired Mickey Callaway, who, let's just be honest, if Mickey Callaway tried to give us any pitching advice, I think we'd fire a two-seamer into his ribs at best. I mean, at worst, honestly.
But I do think the rule itself can be good for Major League Baseball, and what it does is it makes both like sides of fans happy. The casual fan that is like, I don't want to see all these pitching changes, and then also the older, more conservative fan is like, I'm tired of all the analytics. It pleases both sides, and you still have this strategy in the game with, well, should I hit with my DH now? Because I want to continue getting that spot in the order back. It kind of makes everyone happy, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I think it'd be nice to see starting pitchers go a little bit deeper because they tend to be the more marquee of pitchers. They are the handful, like the select relief pitchers that you can look forward to or that people might know by name. But there are fewer household names that are relief pitchers than starting pitchers. So to see starters going deeper because a manager now wants to keep their DH knowing that the bottom of the lineup's coming through and you don't want to have to necessarily pinch hit at that point, you will keep him in there a little bit longer. I think it'll be very interesting. I'm excited to see how it goes in the Atlantic League, how that plays out, and then waiting for that to be implemented in hopefully next season. But we'll see. Truly,
the rule is now you get a DH after you take out your starter. Is that what I'm hearing, or is that?
Yes. So you lose your DH. The DH is attached to the starting pitcher. So once you remove your starter, you no longer have the DH. You can choose to pinch hit or letting a relief pitcher hit, which we all know we don't want any relief pitcher taking any ABs. So
I actually think that's pretty good because then you get the DH and that's an extra. I don't want to say an extra roster spot, but an extra starting spot. So that helps. And then all the guys that are Pablo Sandoval's of the world hitting 3 home runs that are 3 pinch hit home runs this season so far, and the season's like 13 games in. He still gets to keep his job or really just keep his playing time. So I don't think that's a terrible idea.
I think we saw in the pandemic season how beneficial it is to the National League to have a DH. Players that in the you can only be traded to an American League team before if you didn't have a position on the field. That's no longer the case. So it just
I'm laughing at Speedy said except Carlos Torres.
Okay. All right, good. Because all right, cool. Because I'm all in my head right now. But when it comes to the DH, we've seen that like the improvements that it does to the overall game, the gameplay, I should say. And for the traditionalists, this, like you said, Greg, it gives them it's a balance, right? Because you're adding a DH to the NL and you're not too happy about it, but at least you're getting your starting pitchers that are going to go in and do exactly what you want. Give them like 100 plus pitches and be like the workhorses that you saw of yesteryear.
That's accurate. I feel like even in today's game, listen, I've been all for pitchers batting. I love to see guys like Jacob deGrom hitting. The guy was a shortstop in college. The guy he hits better than his team does when
I used to agree with this. Until you look at the batting averages and you see that some of these pitchers can't even hit their weight, and it's like, what are we really doing here?
That's so accurate. Jacob deGrom is a hell of a hitter as a pitcher. 225. That's his batting average.
Even Thor. I love watching. I love watching Thor crush home runs. It was awesome. Thor hits like 180 or 170.
Yeah. I mean, you see him once, every 5 days.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? You got two-way players nowadays, so it's not like you're gonna lose the pitchers batting. I mean, you are, but you're gonna not lose freaks batting.
Here's what I suggest, right? You know how they sometimes televise NBA shoot-arounds, like while they're interviewing people? In college, this I don't know if this is universal, but whenever the staff threw a shutout in college, you would get pitchers BP, right? And pitchers always try to go yak sauce. They try to go yard and BP. Yeah. You see what pitchers who could really hit. And if any team White Sox threw a no-no, we should be able to see the pitchers BP, see who could do as they're interviewing people. I think that would be fun.
That's so fun. I'd love to see like a pitcher's home run derby or something like that. But in today's day and age, they do that. 4 or 5 of those guys are going to go down with like shoulder sprains and be out for like 3 weeks. That's just how it is, dude. Zach Gallen could have been so elite this year, and thankfully he's coming back now and not in June. This guy hurt himself. He like fractured his forearm taking swings. Like, this is another reason why they're going to get rid of the DH. They're going to bring the DH in the National League, whether you like it or not, where the pitchers are hitting, because pitchers are getting hurt. And I don't want to sound like a boomer saying that, back in my day, these guys weren't getting hurt.
As he goes to sound like a boomer.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Everyone's getting hurt nowadays, and it's okay. Like, I know the feeling, though. You throw 7 innings, the next day you're like, oh, is this normal? Like, is my shoulder supposed to feel this way? It seems like there are more injuries, but there's also more advancements and more precautions and the necessary precautions to make sure guys don't go down. But yeah, like we'll see something like that. Like, I always wanted a stolen base contest. Brett Gardner in that? You kidding me? Jacoby Ellsbury would take a slide and be gone for 3 years.
My pick for a stolen base contest is the guy right above you. That guy right there.
Oh God.
Tim LeCastro's joined the show.
Yeah. I will say, throwing that in there, I will say that if we were to do a pitcher's home run derby, I need Dontrelle Willis to be in that. Like, he can, out of retirement, Dontrelle Willis come back, because that dude was a beast at the plate. That's a pitcher that, like, when you saw him come up, like, you had a chance. Runners in scoring position, he took his hacks.
Yeah. Like, is Eric Campbell hitting 8th?
Yeah,
walk him to get to Dontrelle Willis.
Shout out to our producer Speedy. He said Carlos Zambrano and Micah Owings too. Micah Owings played first base and DH at Rice and used to hit tower shots at Rice.
He converted
Zambrano with MVP was always a great choice. Let your pitcher hit.
He converted.
MVP is a video game for PlayStation.
Yes,
by the way, for those that don't know.
He didn't actually win MVP. What's Micah Owings? I think he DH'd in some spring training games for the Nationals one year. I remember. They got going back with this 2-way player stuff. I know we're running short on time here. Maybe this will get Greg to buy MLB The Show so we could finally play Diamond Dynasty against each other. You believe? He has a PlayStation, and I didn't even know that, because all he does is he plays COD and stuff, if you couldn't tell from his headphones. But Road to the Show now, you can do a 2-way player thing. I just got the game last night. I downloaded. You go into it as a 2-way player, and that's Greg's, like, oh my God, that's right up Greg's alley. He could DH, play outfield, first base, and then pitch 7 shutout innings. I think that's something he would want to do, real life or a video game.
Yeah, I think we still need to see more of that from Ohtani. I think, like, we're still waiting on that. The blister on his fingers prevented him from pitching, but he's been crushing it.
Exactly. And we want these guys. We want these guys to do a home run derby.
Yeah.
God forbid one of them doesn't wear batting gloves. We won't see them for a month with the blisters.
Yeah, that isn't something necessarily that I think the MLB will implement anytime soon.
They will not.
But just to wrap up, for our fans that sticking with us, and for a few weeks we haven't talked basketball, we do have basketball for you. So we've seen the season play out. We're about to get into the playoffs here. It was one of those. It was a shortened off season, right? So we know coming off the playoffs, it was the season started on December 22nd, and it was supposed to be a 72-game season, 10 games less than what it typically is. But there's been a plethora of injuries in the NBA, which, you're from your star players to your role players. There's been so many injuries, and, whether you look at that as just part of the course or it being a factor of the shortened off season and not being allowed to rest their bodies, it is something that is impacting the game, especially when you have, faces of the NBA like LeBron James, AD, or James Harden that are not playing, right? KD being that as well. Well, yeah, KD didn't play last year, so it wasn't like he was coming off of, a long season where he didn't get to relax and rest. But I will say that it has an impact, So, Greg, I'm curious to know what your opinion is on this. Do you think that the shortened off season led to these injuries? And if so, what does that mean for, this decision? Did it pay off?
I absolutely think it played a role in it, because when you look at a lot of the injuries, there are a lot of like lower extremity injuries, quads, hamstrings, knees,
Jamal Murray just tore his ACL.
Yeah, and there's a lot of lower and people may not realize, but when you play basketball, running on a hardwood is very strenuous on your joints. And to do it at the level that these guys do it at, it takes a toll. And I get it. Money is the almighty, bottom dollar. Everybody wants to make their money. The league wants to make their money. Players want to make their money. But now we're starting to see the players put their health and safety over the money, and they don't care. They're taking their rest. They're sitting out, and then it's affecting the product that's out. When you look at certain games and you're like, who's this starting five? I think Washington started, the Wizards started starting five like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I didn't know who they were.
With that in mind, though, with all the injury stuff, what is your like kind of opinion on the NBA fans' favorite proverbial punching bag in load management?
I don't think load management is a bad thing if done properly. If you don't rest during national games, because at the end of the day, it's about the product that you put on the floor. Because in the playoffs, that's what people want to see. People want to see stars. So if they have to load manage in the regular season, frankly, I really don't care. Because NBA fans want to see the playoffs. The NBA regular season has become a mere formality because we all know who's going to make the playoffs, give or take 1 or 2 teams at the bottom.
Don't tell that to Carl, though. He'll get very.
Carl will agree with me. Carl will agree with me.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean,
Carl, in the comments, you want to let us know?
Yes, Carl, please.
But
then again, we can get Kawhi Leonard to play back-to-back games more than twice a year. I think that's not a hard ask.
But if you look, that's fair. But he also has bad knees. So can you fault him for doing that in a shortened season, coming off the shortest off season ever?
I'm just talking in general. I mean, I feel like
that's why he does it. But that's why he does it, because he has bad knees. Right. And I already spoke to the how playing the game is on the joints. And on top of that, I think this may potentially hurt the product going forward into next season unless these players have like a significant amount of time off and they alter when the regular season actually starts, or they lessen the amount of games in the regular season.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it did hurt the product. And ultimately, if it was about making money or having eyeballs on the games, you're losing that ultimately when your star players are out for extended periods of time. But, you roll the dice as an organization hoping that this will all work out. That's why, the shortened off season made sense. But like you said, looking at a lineup when you don't know who is playing, you might as well be like a minor league game or, play like watch
a G League game. G League.
All I was going to say, even high school. Like, and I mean, not the play is going to be better, but like, you don't know who the hell is there, So that makes sense to me. But on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us on this Friday edition of Smoke and Mirrors, presented by the Sports Idlits on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Again, I'm your host, Stephen Polius, alongside my fellow host, Declan Krogman and Greg Polius. We had a blast today. Hope you did as well. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back again on Monday between 1 and 2. Take care.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.